One, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you guys so much for joining me for this interview right here. Like, honestly, this was a surprise to say the least. I am here with somebody that you may have seen before in the NXT world. You might have seen him on this YouTube channel. Oh my goodness, what is it called? Oh yeah, Wrestle and Flow. You might have seen him do a lot of projects in the past, but right now he is with me for this awesome conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, Josiah Williams, how are you, my friend?
I'm feeling great. I'm feeling fantastic. Mr. Mike, how are you?
I am doing well, my friend. It is awesome to talk to you after all this time. I believe it's been, what, 2 years at this point?
Something like that. Yes. 2 years and a lot of very fun Wrestling Flow requests in between, some Gulag, some Gargano, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I mean, hey, you got to put a little bit of everything in there. I mean, obviously, we've seen you do your work on different types of wrestlers and stuff like that. But I want to start off this interview with a very spitball or fireball question, as you will. When is the Johnny Gargano remix happening on Wrestle and Flow?
Very spitball, very unexpected question from you, Mike. I would never, ever expect a question about a Johnny Gargano Wrestle and Flow. I would never expect it. I would say you are much closer to that happening now than before. So I was, as most people, a big fan of Rebel Heart. But this new situation that he's got going on right now, musically, is like beautiful. So we'll see what we can do one of these days. And I do mean we are getting closer to it than you think, for sure.
That's awesome. So I want to, after that spitball fireball question, which of course you didn't expect, let's start off with, how people know you by. I mean, obviously, Wrestle and Flow. That's something that had, jumped in, I believe, August of 2018, with the first episode being a very undisputed episode with the Undisputed Era. What was the thought process behind this new series? Something that was way different, especially in the wrestling fan community. What was the idea behind it?
So in between albums or projects that I work on, I always like to do something to kind of refresh, reset, clean the slate. Whether it's just like a song that I've never tried before, or a project in full that I've never done before, just something to like, okay, I got to get out of this mode so that I can be reset when I come back into it. Wrestle and Flow was an idea that I had, 3, 4, 5 years ago, that I never really did anything with. I remember trying to like write to Carmella's track and the Usos, just like having fun, playing around. And originally Wrestle and Flow was kind of, there's a guy named Smoke Dizza who does these like mixtapes where it's like a few at a time, like, around WrestleMania each year. And originally I was going to do like 7 episodes all at once. And then like 6 months later, do 7 more episodes, something like that. And it was a lot of time and it was a lot of commitment. And I'm like, no, let me just try 1 or 2 and see what happens. So the first one that I actually recorded was the AJ Styles theme song. I didn't like it at all. Mm-hmm. Never did anything with it. And then after that, I did Undisputed Era and the Gorillas of Destiny. And those 2, I'm like, I feel pretty good about these. Let me just put them on the internet just for fun. Of course, I'm expecting to get like 7 views, like maybe a like. And obviously it turned into something much more than that, which I'm thankful for. But yeah, initially it was just a fun idea that I wanted to do something to get ready for the next album. That was it.
That's awesome. And of course, like I mentioned before, very undisputed debut in the wrestling community world. But people don't know a lot is that you're also a Christian rapper as well. So what was the, not an inspiration per se, but what was the motivation for you to start your career, as a rapper? And was there any like particular person that had inspired you, or was it kind of just, I'm going to try this. I'm really passionate about it, and let's just see where it goes from there.
Yeah. So originally I started out as just I like to write poetry and spoken word. I did a lot of that in high school. I went to college and eventually started making hip hop music. Towards the end of my college career, I was like, I think I can do a little bit more, and I want my music to have a bit more of a meaning. There was a lot of good stuff, and it got me, you know, really cool opportunities to open up for a bunch of people. But I was like, I think I need some more depth and meaning behind what I'm presenting, and I want it to really sit with people in a way that like has an effect on your life permanently in a way. And I think Christian hip hop was that. So before I made that transition, I just stopped using profanity in all my music, and I'm like, okay, I don't really need it. If I want my grandma to listen to this track, she won't listen to it. So let me just take out some of that. You know what I mean? And then I don't know. I felt like it wasn't enough, so I took that kind of step forward to commit to Christian hip hop music, which, you know, a big part of my life in general is Christianity. Wash your hands, say your prayers. Use the germs are everywhere. And I'm like, why does that have to be separate? Why can't I just put both of them together? So yeah, and it was interesting, at least those first couple of years, because, you know, by the time I was done with college, or at least towards the end of my college career, I keep saying career. You go to college to get a career, not to have a career, whatever. So, you know, there was a lot of cool things happening. I had my first radio hit in college. I had, you know, opportunities to open up for all these cool people, and becoming a Christian artist, that kind of like took some of that away. Oh, you talking about Jesus? Nah, we don't want that. So I kind of had to reset to then find a new platform and elevate in that. And I just still don't think I am where, you know, people would expect to be, but I'm enjoying the process, and I'm really proud of the music that I'm creating. So that's that.
That's awesome. I mean, obviously, humble beginnings from the very start of your career, of your college career, which honestly, I call myself a college career as well. I mean, obviously, but you always have to mention everything as a career. You know what I mean? From the beginnings, from your academic career and stuff like that. I mean, I definitely relate to that too. I just had
elementary school career was a very unique and promising career.
Yeah, I had proficiency in everything.
Yes, of course.
So, but yeah, like you mentioned before, I mean, obviously, you know, starting from the very beginning, not knowing if you had, you know, one view or one like, you know what I mean? So I think that's kind of, people forget about that a lot when they're doing social media and stuff like that. Like, they don't really expect that one view to turn into 100 views, or same versa of like, oh, well, my thing has only got one view and it's been a year. So what kind of advice do you have for those people who are kind of struggling to kind of adapt to, like, okay, this is a process, and we know that it's probably going to take months, years, just to perfect your craft and have people like looking?
Yeah, I think two things. One, if you want it, be committed to it, just in general. No one's going to just hand you the MVP of the NBA. Like, you have to earn being that. You have to be committed to it. And then two, you know, Wrestle and Flow, like you said, there are a bunch of rappers who use wrestling metaphors. There are a bunch of rappers who are like much more knowledgeable about wrestling than I am, than Megaran is, than Wale, Smoke Dizza. Like, there's so many people out there. I think the reason that Wrestle and Flow was a success is because it looked different than everyone else's. So the advice would be to find your thing that's different. If you started Wrestle and Flow right now, or like something that was very similar, people would be like, we've already seen this, right? You know, there's a reason why in wrestling, Eddie Guerrero is different than Shawn Michaels, right? They're two different people, different movesets, different images, different styles of promo. Like, they are their own beings, right? So you don't want to become a wrestler and literally follow the exact model that Triple H had for his career. Like, no, do something different, stand out. So that's my advice.
That's awesome. And again, like you said, being different is most important, is because, like, you have a lot, like, for example, you have 1 million plus wrestling fans out there. What can you do that's different? You know what I mean? Like, what can you do that's like, it's something that with your own taste, but it's different. I mean, I like to personally say, like, you know what? I am going to start a YouTube series where it's just reviewing NXT and AEW, but we've seen like a bunch of that already. Like, how do you do something different? Oh, definitely not copyright war games. Which is not the case at all. Which is not the case at all. But yeah, I totally understand with that, especially with Wrestle and Flow, and you know, just all these different projects that you have done. Speaking about your projects, and specifically about Wrestle and Flow, I do want to talk about one of your Wrestle and Flows in particular as well, and that's Beautiful Black. That's something that has been, especially nowadays, culture and nowadays time. It's very, it's very impactful to watch Wrestle and Flow episodes like that one in particular. So, what was the thought process behind that? And do you think that it would have as much of an impact now as it did when it first got released?
Okay, first question. So, when you're creating like remixes for people, that can get kind of stale quickly, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're at least, if not stale, then it's like a pattern of, oh, you're gonna do this person next, or I'm sure you're at least gonna do this. So I wanted to find ways to make that unique too. Like when you see Wrestle and Flow, it won't always be a remix of a WWE superstar. I think with Beautiful Black, a big part of it was obviously being in February and wanting to find a way to honor Black History Month and Black history. But I also think I wanted to do something that encompassed everyone. So originally the idea was just like, well, you know, during the month of February, we'll do one for Mark Henry, Titus O'Neil, you know, Swerve, and someone else. And I'm like, man, that's cool and it'll work. But what if we try to get as many people as we can in one piece, and something that not only speaks to them, but also speaks to the fans that look like them? Because that's important. That's huge. And I think also with Wrestle and Flow and just myself as Josiah Williams, it's like, if I can get you to watch a remix about Ty Dillinger, if I can get you to watch a remix about Alexa Bliss, I can get you to sit here and watch this remix that, or an original track that honors my culture, that honors history, that talks about some of the problems in the business, but also acknowledges like where we want to go, and kind of like a piece of hope a little bit as well. So I want Wrestle and Flow to be fun, and I want people to engage with the videos, but I also want people to walk away learning something as well. And then I forgot the second question.
The second question was, did you think it was going to have a big of an impact now with everything going on with today's society today?
I don't think I necessarily thought about it. I think in that moment, it was just like, hey, I feel like this is an important track to create. I feel like this is something that can resonate with so many people, and even the people that don't look like me, that are, you know, of a different underrepresented community, or as other people would say, minority. It kind of gives off that feeling of like, hey, this is our culture, this is what we are, this is who we are. Of course, being Black and being African American means that there's a lot going wrong, and we have a history as a people that, you know, it's not the most beautiful history.
Right.
So with that also means that in the future there will be issues. I didn't even necessarily think about that, but as I'm writing the lyrics, I kind of wanted it to be true to what we deal with. It's not peaches and cream. It's not, you know, your favorite ice cream flavor in a cone. It's rough. It's not easy. So for a track like that to hit when, you know, this year has been crazy, but also at the same time, when I say these things, we've been experiencing this for the past however many years. So it's not even like it's new. It's just another resurgence of it. So yeah, I didn't necessarily in specific words have to say, you know, we are struggling in the song, but I did say we have a long way to go. And I think it's cool that resonates with so many other movements of supporting, you know, Black wrestlers, supporting Black-owned businesses, Black Lives Matter. All of that, in a sense, kind of, speaks from this song. So it's cool. It's very cool to see that something 2 years ago still resonates today.
Yeah, again, it's awesome to see that resonate today, like you mentioned before. I mean, there's so many stuff that has been put out years before this all had occurred, and it still impacts today. And being outside of the minority, it's awesome to get these experiences and learn and listen. And to me, it's very impactful.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries, man. So speaking about Wrestle and Flow, we had mentioned about your first episode, which is the Undisputed Era remix. We talked about also Beautiful in Black. There's actually two that I do want to mention, and the one that I want to mention in particular is one that a certain chairman has have in AEW. I'm talking about the chairman, Shawn Spears. How did that collaboration happen, and were you expecting the theme song to be as famous as it is now?
So a big part of Wrestle and Flow, naturally with the superstar that it's speaking to, and kind of how wide ranging it became, of like people are sharing it all over the place. One of the cool things is that I began to connect, with professional wrestlers, not just in WWE, but everywhere. Not saying that we're like best friends and we go, to go get Herbert, but like it was, people would follow and people would, hey, that's really cool. I like what you're doing. And my connection with now Shawn Spears is pretty layered. So, I did his NXT and WWE theme perfection. I did the Sweets, which is him, Tyler Breeze, and Baron Corbin, their game channel. I did one for Peyton Royce, his wife. So like there's a and it wasn't planned. It was just like hey, these are the people that I wanted to do at that time. Mm-hmm. After he got released, he reached out. He's like, hey man, how you doing? What do you think about this idea? And I'm like, I've always wanted to have a song that I can point to in the business of professional wrestling and say, I was a part of that, or I did that, or I created that, whatever. So of course I'm like, yeah, let's go, let's do this. What are you trying to do? So that was in like January or February of 2019, and it's crazy because it worked out. A couple months after that is when I started working for WWE. I remember being either in Milwaukee or Peoria. I don't remember where I was, but obviously by that time the song was done. It was a couple months after I got hired, and I'm working, and my phone starts blowing up. And I'm like, what is happening? What? I didn't do any. I know I didn't do anything wrong. So what is happening? And he had been using it at a bunch of indie shows or whatever, but that was the first time that it played in AEW. And people are like, what? How is this working? What did you do? So yeah, it was it was cool. It was a very cool time to like, man, this stuff is all over the place. Like I didn't expect, like you said, I didn't expect for it to be as big as it got or as it is. But I'm thankful that it did that. Every time I hear it, though, I'm like, man, I wish I added a little bit more. I wish I gave like another verse or like something else. But who knows? Maybe that creates for a remix down the line or something like that. But yeah, very cool opportunity. And I'm super thankful that he even thought to reach out in that. And I'll say also that quarantine and social distancing and shelter in place, whatever you want to call it, has been fun in creating like a lot more for the business. So I'm excited to see over the next, year or two where else you'll hear Wrestle and Flow. We'll see.
Yeah, and again, we're definitely excited to see that what the future holds with Wrestle and Flow. And another one, like I mentioned before, I didn't want to mention is the Ring of Honor one, which is Put in the Work. That one was very interesting to say the least because you it was about the future of Honor. It was talking about the future stars of Ring of Honor that we don't necessarily hear about, or we just watch Ring of Honor just to see the current stars, but we don't really see the young and up-and-coming talent. So can you talk to us about the thought process behind that and what inspired you to showcase these young and talented athletes that we don't necessarily see on Ring of Honor? Or maybe we just surpass them and we just fast forward on the on the episode.
Yeah, I connected with Danny Cage over at the Monster Factory, and at the time he was doing some work with Ring of Honor. We were just talking about the future of professional wrestling in general, and he talked about what NXT is doing and what other companies are doing. And we're like, man, what if we're able to spotlight a little bit of what's happening over here? I completely agreed, and at the time I don't think I really knew about what was going on in Ring of Honor. There's so much that happens in professional wrestling, and like most people, when they think of wrestling, they just think of like WWE. They don't know that there's New Japan and Impact and all these other places that you can kind of tap into, Lucha Underground, whatever. So it was cool because I think that was for the first time, well, aside from Marty, where I'm like, let me talk about somebody and something different a little bit. Mm-hmm. And it was an original too. So yeah, I didn't have anything to like work with. It was like starting from scratch, hitting up producers and saying, hey, what would you think about like a rock rap, but mostly rock beat? And when I heard the one for Put in the Work, what eventually became Put in the Work, I'm like, this is it. This is the one. I want to rap on this right now. And it's also cool because, yes, it applies to what was Future of Honor and what is Ring of Honor, but in a sense, it also speaks to everyone. That's like a workout track. That's a pump-up track. It's something that, whoever you are, you have a goal that you want to achieve, and Put in the Work kind of speaks to that. Like we were talking about earlier, be committed to it, put in the work. And yeah, it turned into a cool track. I think that was the first, Put in the Work was the first track to hit Spotify and Apple Music and all that from Wrestle and Flow. So it'll always have a special place in my heart.
Well, I will admit it is my workout, part of my workout playlist, especially since I was going to the gym mostly every day out of the week. And that would be the first song that would pop up, Put in the Work. And here I am just doing like probably 5-pound dumbbells or something. I'll be honest, I'm not like, yeah! It's like, put in the work. But you know what? It's an awesome track. Like you mentioned before, I think it not only relates to just watching the future of Ring of Honor, people like Silas Young and people like that. It even just relates to just life in general. You know what I mean? If you want something that you're passionate about, you have to put in the work for it, no matter what it is. So that's something that I really respect that was put in your track. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we're dialing down into the final little things of the interview, which I do appreciate you being on here as well. Before we get into my last question, I do want to mention about your transition from Wrestle and Flow to WWE. I mean, obviously, you had a great experience over there. You, in a sense, living the dream. You had rapped with Adam Cole in NXT TakeOver 25, which was absolutely phenomenal. So can you talk about what that in particular was like, and what was that transition from, okay, I was doing this on the side, and then, oh my gosh, I'm in WWE now. So what was that transition like?
Yeah, so the day the Adam Cole track came out, or the Undisputed Era track came out, it was either that day or like the next morning. I can't remember right now, but the person who would end up being my manager in WWE, he reached out and he's like, hey, I like what you're doing. Would you be interested in getting some products like WWE shop merch? I'm like, yeah, I'll wear it. It is what it is. We got on the phone, a little while after that, and we didn't even talk about merch. We kind of just talked about like my journey and what I'm doing. He was really interested, said, hey man, we haven't had anything like this in WWE, and we're always trying to find something new. Let's just test out what you think. So I went to, that was in August 2018. October 2018, I went to Raw in Chicago at the Allstate Arena. And that was like my trial or audition, whatever you want to label it as. I interviewed a bunch of people, Leo Rush, a referee, Dolph Ziggler, Mike Kanellis, a bunch of people. It was bad. It was whack. But it was terrible. But it kind of like prepared me for, okay, if I do get an opportunity at this again, I know what to look for. Maybe like 5-6 months later, they reached out again, said, hey, we want you to just come down to NXT and see what this is all about, which is funny because I, like a couple weeks before that, just like, hey, NXT, will you be my Valentine? And then they became my Valentine. So it was hilarious. So I'm there just hanging out, seeing what the life is like at the Performance Center and at, NXT tapings at the time. And it felt right. And it felt like there was an opportunity there. And I said, if you guys are interested, I'm interested. Let's keep talking. Let's see what this could be. And let's figure out something. Obviously, I got there. My first weekend working was WrestleMania, which was like, what? What? Going from being at home to that weekend, Wale Mania on Thursday, Hall of Fame on Friday, Takeover on Saturday, WrestleMania on Sunday. So I'm like, this is crazy. This is insane. And by that point, like by the end of that weekend, I had pretty much either met or at least seen everyone. I remember I was having lunch at WrestleMania. I was invited to a table that had Cedric Alexander, Shelton Benjamin, Drake Maverick, EC3, a few other people, and John Cena just walks up and said, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, good, sir. How about you? Like, oh man, that's cool. Everyone was there. Taker was backstage. Like, there's so many people. There's so much going on. Finally had a chance to meet Lillian Garcia that weekend, who I've been working with. So, man, there was so much. And then obviously, of course, the performance with Cole and interviewing Stephanie McMahon, interviewing The Rock. Like, there's so much that happened while I was there. And I'm like, super, super thankful for every experience. Hopefully one day a door opens it back and I'm like back to doing what I was doing. But if not, like, I'm so thankful to be able to say that I did it. And that, like, I built it from literally the ground up. It was like wrestling and rapping turned into a full-time position. So we'll see what happens. Who knows?
That's awesome. I mean, like we mentioned before, we've seen you do a lot of stuff with the WWE PC channel over on YouTube, and I'm doing behind the scenes stuff on there as well. So, when it comes to Josiah Williams, I mean, obviously he has made a huge positive impact on the wrestling community. So, I mean, it's awesome to see you live your dream, because as a wrestling fan, and not only that, but as a hopefully personal friend as well, I like to see, people like you, who I've been a fan of since you began, succeed and get to live your dream. Because to me, it's not all about, well, he's in WWE, so I'm jealous. That's not at all. It's like, we're happy to see you live the dream, and no matter what path you go on after this, I mean, it's still, we're here to support you. That's the great thing about fans and people that you meet in social media or just in life in general, is that no matter what, you're always going to have that support system behind you. So, I mean, it's great to see, what you've accomplished and what you're going to accomplish after this. So, I mean, it's cool.
Dude, no, thank you. And thanks for being one of those people who, from towards the beginning of like commenting and then just saying crazy stuff. And I'm like, who is this dude? What is happening right now? I appreciate it. I appreciate your support. I appreciate, always being professional and friendly. Much love to you.
I appreciate that. So the final question, because I know you've been waiting for this question all interview long. People have been waiting. Everybody has been waiting. Here's my final question to you. So, you had just released your first ever album on the market, which is the Furlough Freestyles. What was the thought process behind that? And do you think we will ever get a Wrestle and Flow tour once everything clears up?
Yeah. So I was the day that I found out about all of this, I was taking a walk with Bree. We're just hanging out, you know, 'cause that's kind of towards the beginning of all this, of like, hey, you guys can go outside, just stay 6 feet apart. We're learning what's happening. So they were encouraging, like, take walks, just do little things that can keep you outside of the house every once in a while. So I come back, I see the text message, hey, you're going to be at home for a while. I'm like, okay. Let's see. I knew in that moment I needed to do something. I didn't know what exactly it was. And I'm like, let me figure out something. The next day is when I kind of created the idea of, what if I drop a mixtape? Like, just, you know, I'm going to be at home. What if I drop a mixtape? And I started working on it pretty shortly after that. And I wanted it to be, I don't know, I didn't want people to think that it was like the worst thing that ever happened, because it's not. I mean, if they called me and told me that I would, you know, never come back ever, I would be upset. But it's like, life goes on. You know what I'm saying? I'm not distraught and going to, you know, regret anything that happened in my career. Like, it is what it is, right? Mm-hmm. So, but at the same time, I did want to prove that I'm dedicated. I did want to prove that I'm worth the paycheck that I should be getting. I did want to prove that me being at home was a mistake. Like, now you just awoken, and whatever the word is awoken a word? Yes, because Matt Hardy used it. Now you just turned on something that I feel like should have been there even more. Like, I was already at 100%. Now I'm at 142. So I kind of said that in the lyrics a little bit. Now you just turned on a beast. Like, it's just, I feel like this is something that needed to keep myself moving, but also showing people I'm not giving up. Just because I'm not going to be at work for a while doesn't mean that I'm going to sit here and do nothing. I still got bills to pay. Duke Energy is like, hey, I know that Vince McMahon ain't giving you a check, but you want them lights on, right? So I have to keep going. I had to keep
right.
Working. And I mean, it all comes from a good place too. Of like, I'm not saying that, like, you know, down with the wrestling industry and down with the people who made the decision. Like, you know, it's not that. It's just like, I have to keep moving forward, regardless whether you want me to be at work or not. That's just what it's gonna be. So it's taking a negative situation and just turning it into something beautiful, of like, hey, let's make some music out of this. Let's have some fun, and let's show people that I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to quit. It's not going to be every week like it was, you know, back in 2018 and early 2019. But when I find the opportunity to present something to the world, I want it to be something like that, where it's a good response to a crazy situation. And yes, I would love a Wrestle and Flow tour.
Yes.
I would love a Wrestle and Flow full-length album. I would love for Wrestle and Flow to, whether it's through WWE, anywhere else, it doesn't matter. I have dreams of releasing, you know, a widely distributed, kind of similar to Aggression back in the day, like an album that speaks to the specific wrestler or performer or manager or whoever it is. I don't even care. It can be about Malcolm Bivens. I don't care. I want something that reflects that's actually a part of the industry. So we'll see what happens.
That's awesome. Well, once again, Josiah, thank you so much for joining me on this interview. It was a great conversation, to say the least, getting to, you know, not only Wrestle and Flow, but your entire career as well thus far. And I'm kind of a little bit jealous that you got to work with some of my favorites, known, you know, John Quasto, Alicia Taylor, all the legends over there in Florida, which I'm really surprised, because like when I first saw that Instagram post. I believe it was Alicia Taylor at first. I mean, I was like, wow, you're working with my heroes here. So I mean, hey, I mean, like you ring announcing, and I believe you did a Wrestle and Flow sample over at an NXT taping one time. So
yeah.
so I know this wasn't a part of the notes, but what was that like?
Man, it's crazy because so when I came in, they're like, we're just gonna try a bunch of new stuff. We'll just see what happens. I have recorded almost a full EP of Wrestle and Flow originals for NXT. And there's so much that we worked on that hasn't been or released or presented to the public. There's so many ideas, but the night after Survivor Series, or excuse me, the night of Survivor Series, I did a diss track to Raw and SmackDown, and I'm like, hey, NXT's walking away with the victory here. Let's just go ahead and talk about it. I need you guys to know because it's gonna happen. So after we won, Shawn Michaels is like, hey, you know that thing that you did for Twitter? We want you to do that live. I'm like, what? So yeah, that turned into a thing of like an actual live performance that I'm like, this is cool. There are a lot of those moments of, like you said, of trying out different things that really worked out. So even that kind of speaks to what I was talking about earlier. Like, there's so much potential for whatever can happen out of Wrestle and Flow. So I'm so motivated, man. Like, I'm so motivated.
Yeah.
So you'll see so much more with Wrestle and Flow, and hopefully sooner than later. We'll see.
That's awesome. Well, once again, thank you so much. Of course, if you guys don't follow Josiah on all social medias, link will be down in the description below. You already know what the deal is. You already know that Josiah Williams is not only a Wrestle and Flow creator, originator, showcaser, but he's also an advocate of positivity. You already know that he's an advocate for so much great things in this wrestling community. So make sure you guys go follow him. He's a great rapper. He's a great artist. You guys make sure you do that as well. And of course, a huge wrestling fan as well. So appreciate that as well.
Oh yeah.
And of course, the Johnny Gargano remix will eventually come. So, once again, I know I'm running along here, but thank you so much, Josiah. And we will see you guys in the next interview. Until then, salutations. Boom.
Yes, sir.
And nope, it's not ending broadcast. There you go.